Hello and welcome to the second part of my guide to Final Fantasy XIV Online. This guide is primarily aimed at beginners, people who've never played Final Fantasy XIV or an MMO, if I can say it, an MMO before, or for those of you who have been playing Final Fantasy XIV, but this is your first MMO. And I'm also hoping that for more experienced players you can find things that will help you on your travels. So in the first episode I covered character creation and the HUD, the heads-up display. In this episode we're going to be talking about the crossbar, which is for the PlayStation 4. If you are a PC owner, as I said in the last episode, there are plenty of tutorials and key bindings out there on YouTube. It doesn't necessarily have to be specifically for Final Fantasy XIV. There are great ones for World of Warcraft, and learning about how to keybind things will translate equally as well into Final Fantasy XIV. So let's just get into it, because I don't want this video to go on too long. So I'll bring up the HUD, and you should be familiar with that from the last episode. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the options screen, and we're going to go scroll all the way across, all the way across to System, and we're going to come down to this menu here, Character Configuration, click that, and on the left hand side you want to scroll down to Hotbar Settings, which is what this is all about. Now if you click into that with your X button and scroll across to Custom. Now this is just a guide, this is just the way I do it. There are plenty of options within this that you can explore in your own time. Different ways of setting up the hotbar and making them more expansive. But this works for me, and I've found in gameplay and combat it's a really good setup. So you want to do is enable expanded controls with the X button. Make sure that box is ticked. Come down to the next selection, and if you press X into it you'll get a lot of options. Make sure cross hotbar 4 left is selected, and then the next one also the same, identical, cross hotbar 4 left. And then if you scroll all the way down, make sure that enable auto hotbar switching is off, and enable customization when weapon is sheathed is on. And initially, so I want you to ignore this and set it up the way that I'm showing on the screen. So you just want to select hotbar 1 and 2 in both of those lists and deselect all the other hotbars, so it looks like that, and then press apply. Ignore what I'm doing right at the moment, and I'll talk about that a bit later on. Then you want to scroll across to sharing, and in sharing set it up as you can see on the screen again. Press apply and we're all done. Again, ignore what I'm doing right at the moment. So once you've done that, you'll come out, and if you're right at the beginning after doing the HUD, you won't have really anything on the bars, and what you'll see is you will see set 1 but with nothing on it, and you won't be able to click. If you press R1, which is the button you press to cycle through the options here like this, you won't see anything else, okay, because nothing else is assigned to anything at the moment. So let's go through this as quickly as we can. If you hold down L2, you raise the left hand side of a particular hotbar set, and if you press R2 you raise the right hand side. And if I raise the left hand side with the L2 button, you'll also see that the cursor keys and the buttons, the shape buttons, are also assigned to different boxes, and this helps you select different actions and abilities. If you hold down L2 and R2, you'll come to this, which is set 4, and it is 8 other boxes, again selecting with the cursor keys and the shape buttons. So we have potentially now one set, two sets, ignore that one, and this third set. So you're going to have three sets to use. Now if we click into the options button and you go to actions and traits, this will bring up all of the actions and abilities that you can assign to the hotbars and use in your adventures. Initially you're not going to have many at all, and regardless of the class you have, I'm going to try and describe how I would approach organizing all of the kind of abilities that you'll get. This will obviously increase once you get to level 30 and you gain a job, and then you'll get a sizable amount more. We also have role actions, and the role actions are given to the three subdivisions: tanks, healers and DPS. They all have their own roles that they share between those subdivisions. So all healers, this is a healing class, will have these six to choose from, and tanks will have another 6 to choose from, and DPS will have another 6 to choose from, and of course they unlock as you progress. And traits you don't have to worry about, but they're useful to know. They are passive abilities. In other words, you don't have to do anything. They work in the background, and as you level up and get higher up, you get more powerful in certain respects. Performance you don't need to worry about unless you're a bard, but it's nothing really to worry about. It's just bards, and I believe dancers as well, can use musical instruments to play, but that's something for much later in the game. Don't need to worry about it. Don't worry about orders at the moment. General. So general, the four that you're going to need to concentrate on this list, at least initially, are sprint, teleport, return and limit break. You're not going to have teleport initially. You will get return very soon after your first quest, and sprint you will have immediately. So with this square button, if you select it, you'll get, and this applies to anything on these lists, if you press square you'll get this menu, this message, and it says press a button combination to assign it to an action. So what we want to do with sprint, because it's so useful, is on your R1 set, again ignore all of that, so I'll go to what would be set 1 for this character, but it's labelled set 3. On R2 and square, that's where I've placed sprint, and I've found that to be very useful. Sprint is really useful because in combat you can still use it. So that means you can get a speed boost, and that becomes really useful later on when you're dealing with an awful lot of complicated things going on and you need to move out of the way really quickly. So having sprint available on R2 and square works for me. I would advise whichever box you want to put sprint in, that it's one of those things that are immediately available and you don't really have to think about where it is. With teleport, I will explain that a bit later on, but you'll want to put that on the R2 set. Now to select the R2 set, you can hold, if I click out of this, you can hold down R1 and you'll see the 8 gear sets available. If you then select it with circle, so you can cycle through them this way, you can then get to the second set, and yours will be blank. So as soon as you get teleport, you can assign it wherever you want, but I would advise you putting it on set 2, not set 1, and the same with return, wherever that feels best. With the R2 set as well, if you go to actions and traits and come down to main commands, out of the main commands, I find it useful again to place character, armory chest, inventory and currency all in a little grouping on the right hand side there with the shape buttons. Again, it's up to you where you put them, but that feels good for me, and it's a good way to get these very useful lists up that you'll be using in your adventures. So that's those four: teleport, return, and run, all covered. With duty, you want to come across and select journal. Again, put it on the set 2 somewhere. The journal is a list of all of your quests that you can embark on. Very useful to have that in hand there. And then logs, you will be introduced to later on in your leveling process with your class. And they're very useful for gaining experience, hunting things in different areas that you'll come to. So again, you might want to put that on R2 for reference. Social emotes, you can pop that on, and that gives you a list of all the emotes that are available in the game. You can even then go into the emotes menus and select an emote with the square button, and if you scroll down you have the add to hotbar option and you can place that. But I would advise things like emotes and other reference things to be on the set 2, not on your primary set, which will be set 1. Now, even though it's going to say set 3 instead of set 1, what you have now done, since you've applied different abilities to set 1 and set 2, is you'll be able to cycle with R1 between the two. And the reason we set up the hotbar as we did is that if we hadn't, what would happen if we put any abilities or anything on any of the other hotbars, we would click between 1 and 2. Once we got to 2, if we clicked again, we'd go to another separate set, and another separate set, and another separate set. And in combat, you don't want to be trying to cycle through more than 2 sets, because you're going to get lost. You're going to find it really difficult to get to the set that you have a particular ability or something, especially in combat when time is, scarce. And so just want 2, and normally in combat you're only going to be on set 1 and using the L2 and R2 buttons to bring up that set 4. Now, to assign abilities to set 4, it's as I said before, you hold down R1 and then you can choose set 4 like this. But you'll notice that when I do that, there are skills and abilities on the R2 side, yet when I hold L2 and R2 they're not there. That's because we're only using the left hand side of this menu, and so you're going to need to only assign things to the left hand side, as you can see. Now, what would you want to put on set 4? Well, those are going to be any abilities that have what we call long cooldowns. In other words, it's a long time before you can use the ability again relative to other spells, and spells that are kind of really enhance you or the party or do something special rather than just primary combat skills or spells against one target. That's what I would advise. So your long cooldowns you really want on set 4, and that kind of then gives you, that the long cooldowns are here and you can pop them easily and jump back straight to set 1. In terms of set 1, on the left hand side, the shape keys, that's the triangle, circle, X and square, I would advise having your primary combat skills there in any combination that fits well, as well with the cursor keys. And on the right hand side, you have sprint already associated. You want to put other useful skills wherever they feel comfortable, but they aren't so immediately needed for combat. And that's because I'm right-handed anyway. If you're left-handed, you might work in reverse better for you. You'll also notice that on the right-hand side, I have a potion assigned to one of those and a mount. And I'll be talking about that in the next lesson when I talk about combat. So that is really basically the basics of the cross hotbar, how to set it up, some of the approaches about assigning skills and actions to it. Generally, because you're going to be, as I advised in the last episode, leveling up one character to the maximum level first and not doing anything with any other classes, so just going from one class to one job and then to level max, all of the abilities and everything will be introduced slowly, and you can keep on reorganizing them via the methods I just showed you until you feel really comfortable with it. And that's the main thing as a beginner. Just stick to one class, one job, and get to know it inside out, because that's also going to help you when you go to other classes and then jobs, on how to organize your skills and abilities. And also you'll find that the R2, the set 2 that we just discussed, probably won't change much at all when you start a new class, because you'll already have those class and job abilities for the most part on set, there, rather than on set 1 and set 4. So I hope that helps. Thank you very much for watching and listening, and in the next episode we're going to talk about combat, we're going to talk about food and drink, and we'll start to talk about mounts and some other features. Until then, take care.